wanted to talk to you about my latest book, and maybe touch on some other books as well throughout the small videos that I'm going to make, which are, I thought I'd keep them to no more than about 8 to 10 minutes long, maybe just little kind of tasters of some of the subject matters which are in the books that I've written over the years, and especially the recent book Journeys in the Dreamtime, and the nature of the subject matter that I've been looking at while writing these books. So the book looks at the occult history of art, and to get into that subject you're gonna have to look at other material that has interested me for many years, which would relate to extraterrestrials and the idea of how we tap into otherworldly forces and what they are in terms of who we are as human beings. As an artist myself, and as somebody who has spent a long time looking at other realities through subject matters, through personal experience, then the nature of the world that we dwell in as a three-dimensional human being, flesh and bone, is not necessarily anything like the worlds that we encounter through our dreams and through our visions, especially through things like lucid dreaming and through other areas as well, which could relate to maybe acts of meditation, the idea of using certain chemicals, let's say, whether it's ayahuasca or things like that, where people have had, or DMT, where people have had all sorts of experiences and visions over the years. The paintings behind me here, the visionary heads, are some of the oldest pieces that I've produced over the years. There's quite a few that people have seen before, but these came from me accessing my inner worlds, mainly through meditation and through just this natural, almost organic, transcendental connection to these other places. So one of the subjects in the book that relates to this is something which is a chapter in part, I think it's in part 4 of the book, which looks at DNA, and it looks at the idea of some kind of ancient DNA and the masters of DNA. And the book, and I was reading magazines like The New Scientist, and I was looking at other information and other authors' work. Anthropologist scientists had said, to quote, "One segment of DNA contained more than 1 million base pairs, enough for a decent sized novel or potted history of the rise and fall of an alien civilization." And I thought that was quite interesting. That was said in 2004. When you look at art and you look at some of the fantastic imagery of what would perceive to be non-human creatures, entities, beings, whatever you want to call it, religious iconography and art as well, then it's interesting that when you do see it, you see that the majority of human DNA is off-world in origin anyway, and the extraterrestrial connection is through the junk genetics, or what they call, mainstream science calls, junk DNA or junk genes. But that's just a term, really, as almost a throwaway term, and it relates to something else, which is that these genes are actually hard-working and active and are passed on through different generations. And this is why the American Indians would talk about ancestral light and ancestral genetics that would pass through their lines. And it's no different with the so-called elite families and bloodlines, even down to human life as we know it, and animal life. So the alien parts of junk DNA have their own veins, their own arteries, their own immune systems, and they seem to be able to resist lots of other things. I find it amazing that you can go through art subjects and sculpture on Gothic cathedrals, and Egyptian art, shamanic drawings and paintings, things that relate to how other cultures, native cultures, have tapped into this DNA, this understanding of DNA, and they've put it into their cultural sort of heritage, not least through their imagery. So, what we're looking at are programs. And according to, like I say, Sam Chang of the Human Genome Project, he said sooner or later we have to come to grips with the unbelievable notion that every life on Earth carries genetic code for his extraterrestrial cousin, and that evolution is not what we think it is. Well, of course, because we look back, as I say, at art and images that relate to what could be non-coding DNA or junk DNA, it relates to some kind of interaction between an otherworldly species or specieses or extraterrestrials and our human genome. Look at the figures, the lion-headed humanoids and the other animal bipedal images. Some of them go back 30,000 years. And what do they relate to, really? What are they about? What are they really about? Are they about higher consciousness, animal-human fusion of consciousness, or were they an actual depiction of a genetic creature which was part animal, part human, maybe tampered with by extraterrestrial origin sources, or maybe were part extraterrestrial in their own right? So yeah, the subjects that I cover in the chapter that relates to ancient masters of DNA would be things like the missing link, and how that from a artistic point of view as well is not only fascinating in terms of material and imagery, especially, like I say, when you look at some of the sculptures, that you see, whether it's Egyptian art, ancient Egyptian art, whether it's temple art, Gothic cathedrals, it's all part of the same brotherhood of subjects, the cults that have used art, especially as a propaganda tool, to convey certain meanings and messages. So, whether it's the Bigfoot in terms of missing link, the fact that even children as recent as the last decade, or even probably still going on, were born with tails in some parts of the world. All of this relates to, the DNA, the junk DNA. And there's, like I said, there's plenty of examples of it. And then you've got things like hypertrichosis, where humans have been born with full body hair, which makes them look rather Chewbacca, Yeti-like, which must have some connection to an ancient epoch. And the DNA, the junk coding and non-coding DNA, you had stories of King Ursus, the royal lines which were covered in hair as well, connected to the wood woes, other subjects that relate to hairy humanoids. So in the book I have various examples of some of these subjects that relate to masters of DNA and creatures, extraterrestrials, otherworldly entities and things like that, especially connected to the Dreamtime and the idea of the astral world, and how we are not the same. We're not the same when we travel in the Dreamtime, in the astral world. There's many stories of people lucid dreaming and having a different body. I mean, I've experienced this, and I'm sure you have, and other people have. Going through windows, entering a different reality, and being prevented by forces from entering another reality and going into these different spaces and places of these otherworldly creatures. In the book, things like the werewolves, Bigfoots, woodwoes. Gothic cathedrals were full of them, if you go back, and if you look at some of the cathedrals in France especially, and in the UK, there's an amazing sculpture at Chester Cathedral which shows what looks like a reptilian cloaked figure just above the king, to the right hand side of one of these other sculptures. And these were all in the kind of the outer details, or the cloisters as they call them. So yeah, mermaids, there are other subjects as well that relate to that. Cyclops, wolfmen, antipodes, skyopodes. The Catholic Church obsession with oddities like hunchbacks and werewolves, and so on and so on and so on. So all of this is in the book. There's other cultures throughout the world, especially in South America, that look at Bep Caroti, this kind of alien creature that was supposed to have come and taught the natives out science and music and other things, technology, and they're all depicted in their ceremonies. And so where are we? Are we in Atlantis Revisited? What's going on in terms of genetic mutation today? GMO, all these things in foods. It all relates to the same subject, and it's not necessarily the same thing, but it is part of this understanding. And it could well relate to us having some kind of genetic overlord, masters in the ancient world that tampered with the human genetics, possibly in a laboratory. Was the laboratory on the moon? Or was it somewhere else? You know, was it underground? Was it in one or two of these vast ancient civilizations going back before Babylon? We'll never know the answer to that, should you choose to venture into the Dreamtime and have a meander through the pages. I'll be coming back with more short videos and talking about subjects for those that are interested. Anyway, see you soon. See you next time.